2021 webinar series hosted by the Ozark. This webinar is being uploaded to our YouTube channel. I'll put so that you have it. Just to kind of talk a little bit about our organization, we are a nonprofit that promotes environmentally sound landscaping practices to preserve biodiversity through the preservation, restoration, and establishment of native plant communities. You can join our chapter by going to our website, wildones.org/membership. You can find out more information about our local chapter at ozark.wildones.org or on our Facebook at facebook.com/ozarkwildones. You can also contact us by email at wildonesozarkchapter@gmail.com. The next webinar coming up in our webinar series is on September 21st at 11 a.m. Rosalind Emery with the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks is going to give a presentation on putting your native plant garden to bed for winter and how to prepare your native plant garden for the winter months. And then the month after that, on October 12th at 11 a.m., Laurie Scott with the Northwest Arkansas Community College Outdoor Living Laboratory is going to talk about ecotype seed collection and cleaning. You can register for these webinars on our chapter website. Again, that's ozark.wildones.org, or you can send me an email at wildonesozarkchapter@gmail.com. And again, I'll put these links into the chat here in just a moment. Our speaker this month is Leslie Cooper. Leslie is the Arkansas Monarch and Pollinator Coordinator for Quail Forever and has been working as the coordinator for the Arkansas Monarch Conservation Partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and Quail Forever since 2018. A graduate of the University of Idaho, she holds a Bachelor of Science in Ecology and Conservation Biology and a Bachelor of Science in Fire Ecology and Management, as well as has a certificate in remote sensing of the environment. She is based at the NRCS state office in Little Rock, and today she's going to talk to us about monarch conservation in Arkansas. Well, thank you, Leslie, for being here.
Thank you so much, Eric, for having me. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the webinar. I'm going to turn off my video as I start my presentation, and I'll turn it back on for questions at the end. I just want to say that, Eric did a wonderful job of introducing me. And as the coordinator, I never pass up an opportunity to throw me and my butterfly cape onto a presentation. I'm going to be tearing through a lot of this work fairly quickly, but part of my job is obviously coordinating for the Arkansas Monarch Conservation Partnership, but I also provide technical assistance and training to private landowners and NRCS field offices and partners. So an overview of the presentation today, I'm going to be quickly talking about monarch biology, what we're doing here in Arkansas, and what you can do for pollinators at home. There are three distinct populations of monarchs in the US. There's the western population that overwinters along the coast in California. There's the eastern population that's east of the Rockies that we see here in Arkansas. They migrate south and overwinter in central Mexico. And there's a third non-migratory population in southern Florida. Monarchs undergo complete metamorphosis, which means that, we kind of go back to kindergarten, and the monarchs start out as an egg and hatch into a caterpillar. I'll talk a little bit more about the stages that they go through. They form a chrysalis, not a cocoon, and after about 2 weeks, they emerge as an adult. And the adult monarchs live for 2 to 6 weeks typically, but some of them can live up to 9 months, and I'll talk about that a little later. So this is a monarch that was laying eggs on the native milkweed that I had propagated a couple of years ago. And just before the egg is about to hatch, the tip of the egg will turn black, and that's the head capsule. And then the tiny caterpillar hatches and turns around and eats the egg. And then it would be the equivalent of a human baby growing to be the size of an elephant in 2 weeks. You can see the big size differences. The different, sizes, if you will, of caterpillars are called instars. So instar is just the phase in between molting. So caterpillar skin doesn't stretch. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that there's the discarded skin after, a freshly molted caterpillar. So they go through 5 instars, and then they crawl away from the milkweed plant. and hang in a J shape. So after they begin molting for this final time, it really takes only a minute, but they do hang upside down for a couple of hours. And then after they're finished, they scrunch up so that they form the recognizable pupa or chrysalis that we know and love. So it's a common myth that, the monarchs turn into soup inside the chrysalis. By the time that they form the pupa, they're actually already showing adult body parts. So the very last thing for them to develop is pigmentation on their wings. And the cool thing about, Lepidoptera, butterflies and moths, are, it means like scale wing. So each pigment on the butterfly's wings are in a uniquely colored scale that covers it. So I remember when I was little, we used to call it, dust or fairy dust for the butterflies to fly. So when the monarch is ready to eclose, the wings pigment and it turns that recognizable orange and black color, and they eclose or emerge out of their chrysalis. And in this last photo, you can kind of see the large abdomen, and what they do is they pump fluid from their abdomen to inflate their wings, and then they hang upside down to dry. So I just went over the monarch life cycle, and a lot of these date ranges depend on temperature and other environmental conditions, but monarch butterflies also undergo an annual life cycle. So the migration that I kind of hinted at earlier is actually accomplished by 4 to 5 and maybe even 6 generations of monarch butterflies. So they begin overwintering in central Mexico, and they're there from November to March approximately, and then they begin their journey north. So the overwintering generation goes up and lays eggs, which is generation 1, and then generation 1 goes on to lay generation 2, and so on and so forth until the fall migration begins. And it's just about to start now. So these eggs are special, and these are the butterflies that will migrate and overwinter in central Mexico. So I've mentioned milkweed already, but I do want to say specifically that monarch caterpillars are host plant specialists, which means that they only eat milkweed. Here you can see pictured there are monarch caterpillars on 4 different native species of milkweed that we have here in Arkansas. There's Asclepias hirtella on the left, Asclepias incarnata, and then world milkweed, which is Asclepias verticillata. And then on the right, we have green antelope horn milkweed or spider milkweed, which is Asclepias viridis. And adults, they are not, obligated to stick with the milkweed. They nectar on a variety of different sources. So particularly when we're planning and planting our native gardens, it's really important to fuel their migration and plant early blooming spring species and also some late blooming fall nectar plants. The overwintering sites in central Mexico, I feel, are the closest thing to magic that really exists in this world. If you'll notice in the middle photo, the orange foliage that's on the trees, well, it's not foliage at all. It's hundreds of thousands of butterflies that cover the oyamel fir trees in central Mexico. The butterflies are so heavy that the branches actually sag under their weight. I highly recommend looking up some YouTube videos of it. I wish I could have included it today. But they only roost in these oyamel fir forests. And what the biologists do is we monitor this by measuring the population in hectares, which is approximately 2.5 acres. And it's like 2.5 football fields, including the end zones, if you want to visualize that. So this is a map that most people are familiar with. It's produced annually by Monarch Watch. And this graph just shows the size of the overwintering population in Mexico. So you can see that there's kind of this general downward trajectory over the last 2 decades. We did have a good overwintering year in 2018, 2019, but it's declined in recent years. But the thing that I want to highlight most is that the 10-year average is still only at 2.6 hectares. And experts estimate that we really need to maintain an overwintering population of 6.6 hectares, over a 10-year average to sustain the monarch migration. The migration stretches over 3,000 miles, and it's one of the largest, animal migrations in the world. And it's butterflies. So what's happening? Ultimately, it's habitat loss, untimely mowing and development of our natural areas and, nectar plants. Also, the overuse of pesticides, specifically insecticides. They're non-discriminatory. So when people try and kill the pests in their garden, they may accidentally kill the beneficial insects that they want to keep. There's also still illegal logging that occurs in the overwintering grounds. And, monarchs are also very susceptible to untimely weather events. The photo on the right was a blizzard that came through. Thankfully, a majority of the overwintering population had left. But as you can see, when they're clustered so closely together in such high numbers in the overwintering grounds, they're very susceptible to big impacts, like huge population losses with one single event. They're also susceptible to natural enemies and natural predators. Only about 10% of monarch eggs make it to adulthood, but I like to remind people that this is still okay because only about 10% of, the adult monarchs lay approximately 300 eggs in their lifetime. So what is Arkansas doing? So in 2015, the Arkansas Monarch Conservation Partnership was formed. It's a collaborative of conservation organizations, agricultural groups, government agencies, businesses, academia, utilities, and private landowners. And this is just a snapshot of our partners. We have over 35, and we're very proud to be working through these groups. They participate in the steering committee and 3 subcommittees that are very active. I'll go into the sections later. Well, the steering committee put forth the Arkansas Monarch and Pollinator Conservation Plan in May of 2018. So the plan is made up of 5 different sections. The first is focusing on habitat conservation, enhancement, and restoration. The second is research and monitoring, outreach and education, capacity governance and funding, and collaborations and partnerships. And one of the things I love the most about this plan, compared to some other state resources, is it's really, very short. It's very comprehensive. So if you're interested in checking it out, please go and find it on our website at arkansasmonarchs.org. So really fast, before I kind of start digging into some of the past accomplishments and work of the partnership, I want to establish what I mean when I say monarch and pollinator habitat, because it gets a little fuzzy for some people. So when I say monarch and pollinator habitat, I'm talking about habitat that includes a high diversity of natives, specifically wildflowers, and it does cover the entire growing season. So we're having a succession of blooms so that there's a constant supply of nectar and pollen. It varies in flower sizes, shapes, and structures to support a higher diversity of pollinators. It also includes those native milkweeds for the monarchs. We have 21 native species of milkweed in Arkansas, so there's quite a diversity for us to choose from, even though most of those species aren't necessarily commercially available, but they are seen on high quality restoration sites. And finally, remember that we're managing this habitat to benefit all pollinators and other wildlife, including our native bees, bobwhite quail, turkey, deer. So the first section in the plan is to provide high quality habitat comprised of that diversity of nectar producing plants that includes milkweeds that are suitable for monarch reproduction, and it's available to the pollinators throughout the growing season. So the objective was to restore, create, or enhance 3,500 acres on private land, 500,000 acres on public land, and 7,000 acres on public and private rights of way by 2023. Just in 2018, 2019 alone, we impacted over 45,000 acres on private land, which is 13 times the 5-year goal. And that's not even including the 2020 numbers, let alone the 2021 numbers. We've also impacted over 60,000 acres on public land. So we're well on our way to our goal, and more than 32,000 acres on public and private rights of way, which is 4.5 times the 5-year goal. And that was just in the first 2 years. One thing, so I'm kind of going to start jumping around. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat box and I will be happy to answer it at the end. So the Xerces Society, Quail Forever, and USDA NRCS funded the Arkansas NRCS Pollinator Conservation Planning Handbook. This is a free resource. It's mainly targeted towards NRCS conservation planners, but it has a wealth of knowledge and resources, and it's a great resource that we have here in the state. We're very proud to have it, and I can link it in the description, or I can send to Eric to send out after the fact. One thing that I want to highlight is at the back of the book, we actually have different seed mixes that were created by Quail Forever. They're ecoregion seed mixes, and the seed mixes on average have a total of 61 native species, with no more than 9 native grass species at 15% by weight. And these high diversity native mixes meet all NRCS program specs, and the cost comes in at about $300 an acre. We also have several native warm season grass grazing mixes that can also support pollinators. And we also have a statewide solar and rights of way mix that I'll talk about a little later. So one thing that I did want to highlight is Quail Forever and NRCS and Arkansas Game and Fish have farm bill biologists across the state. We have 8 partner positions total in Arkansas, and what they do is they help landowners utilize federal and state cost share programs to improve and put high quality habitat on the ground. So they provide free technical assistance and they write free management plans. And I don't have the updated numbers, unfortunately, for this past year, but as of June 2020, 443 management plans were created. Over almost 40,000 acres were put into farm bill programs. Over 3,000 acres have been enrolled in Arkansas Game and Fish's Acres for Wildlife program, and they've held over 200 workshops and field days. And I know that number is higher because I have helped put some of those on. So rights of way, mainly people, I never heard the term before I started this job, but we're currently working with RDOT, Enable Midstream, Today's Power, Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation, and other rights of way stakeholders to create habitat on those public and private rights of way. This helps increase habitat connectivity across the state. And let's see. Some of the newer ones are the solar arrays and pollinator habitat. And just to highlight the importance of rights of way. So the gray lines on this map represent the 25,000 miles of primary and secondary roadways that we have here in Arkansas. These blue lines show the 7,500 miles of primary transmission lines. And this map shows the 5,600 miles of natural gas pipelines that we have stretching across the state. So with all of those maps overlaid, you can really see that these habitat corridors really add up, and we can really help increase connectivity across the state to help facilitate the monarch migration. So Ben Guerin Golf Course in Fort Smith, we are very proud partners of Sebastian County Parks, but what they're doing is a Mazard Prairie restoration, and over 100 acres have been restored. If you have not gone and see the restoration work that Jay Randolph has started, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a really great project, and I love going and seeing all of the great work that he's doing. Some other random projects that are going on, the City of Little Rock Parks and Rec has Western Hills Park. They recently received funding, and they are going to work on incorporating wild areas into this and managing for natives. And then the city of Monticello planted some pollinator habitat at Lake Monticello. They're interested in looking into monarchs in the rough. Monarchs in the rough is a national program that's hosted by Audubon and, oh goodness, and the Natural Resources Defense Fund. And basically it's just an opportunity for golf courses to receive free native seed to establish habitat on the rough areas around the golf course. They also put in some habitat near the baseball fields. And at Village Creek State Park's golf course, they're also establishing pollinator habitat in the rough areas. So I'm very excited for that project to continue. Sebastian County Conservation District has several projects going. They have the Urban Initiative Project that incorporates Holland Oaks Farm and Hope Campus, which is a resource, and they're going to try and incorporate native grasses and forbs into their planning. Bearcat Hollow is a project from the U.S. Forest Service. They're converting these cool season grass openings in the forest to monarch and pollinator habitat. And they actually, before COVID, had an annual work weekend for volunteers that was coordinated by the Arkansas Wildlife Federation. So keep an eye on that. I haven't heard any updates, and obviously all of these photos were taken before 2020. So the second goal in that habitat section of the plan is to increase the supply of native seed. And if you've ever gone looking for Arkansas ecotype seed, you know that it's a bit of a struggle. We're a little bit further behind, Missouri to the north. The Arkansas Native Seed Program was created as a separate collaborative. And I know that Audubon is working on their native project through NRCS funding to increase the supply of ecotype seed. And the partnership promotes native seed collections across the state. So if you haven't already, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram so that you can hear about those events. Project Wingspan, which is from the Pollinator Partnership. Pollinator Partnership, or P2, is a nonprofit out of California, and they recently received grant funding to help establish this Project Wingspan program in Arkansas. It's coming to a close, but I believe it ends in 2022. And if you're interested in getting a group together to help do those seed collections, in addition to the seed collections hosted by the Arkansas Native Plant Society, Audubon, UA Herbarium, and other groups, please let me know. One success story that I always like to highlight is called the Covey Project. So it was started by Little Rock Garden Club, and they approached Game and Fish and Quail Forever and Audubon and Central Arkansas Water to do native seed collections to reestablish and create pollinator habitat on land that Central Arkansas Water owns. The project is actually in its, I think it's its 4th or 5th year, and they're doing really great work. So we're very happy that this is just one example of how volunteers can really make an impact on the ground and work together and benefit pollinators. So on our website, we, as a partnership, have created some great handouts for BMPs, pollinators, and you can find those on our website. The section for research and monitoring really focuses on 2 things. It's to increase and expand knowledge for monarchs and native bees, and to also expand monitoring efforts to inform our conservation actions. So we did host a research forum in 2019, and this subcommittee is really taking off because we're really focused on trying to get kind of a better grasp on the native bees that we have here in Arkansas, doing a species inventory, because we really don't even know what we have. And this group also developed milkweed propagation protocols that NWAC, or Northwest Arkansas Community College, really spearheaded. So we're very grateful for that. If you're not on iNaturalist already, I highly encourage you to join. If you do join and create a free account on iNaturalist, please join the Arkansas Monarch Mapping Project. So far, it's had 210 people participate and submit almost 1,300 observations. You can see the number breakdown there, but if you have any trouble submitting either through the app or on your desktop, please let me know. This project is a little bit unique because you do have to add your observations to the project and it doesn't pull it automatically. If you go onto your desktop, it looks like this. You can just Google the Arkansas Monarch Mapping Project. And if you're on your app, you just snap that photo of the monarch, and at the bottom, you add it to the Arkansas Monarch Mapping Project. You just say how certain you were, if it was a monarch, the life stage that it was in. You can choose either egg, larva, or adult, and then the number of individual monarchs that you observed. And you do have to submit separate observations if you saw, say, an adult and a caterpillar at the same time. So citizen science, or community science as we're now calling it, some of the big ones that we're encouraging people to participate in include Journey North. It's similar to the Arkansas Monarch Mapping Project, but they have a great map across the United States, and you can literally watch the migration kind of, begin its journey north and then continue south to the overwintering ground. So you can kind of see this wave of monarchs as they make their way across the country and into parts of southern Canada. We're also encouraging people to join the Integrated Monarch Monitoring Program, or IMMP. If you or your group is interested in participating in this, I'd be happy to connect you to training resources and also maybe even do a field demonstration. I know that the Arkansas Master Naturalist in Northwest Arkansas had scheduled to have me come out and do a presentation, and then COVID squashed it last year. So the program's still running and we're still encouraging people to do that. And then in addition to adding your observations of monarchs, I'd really like you to start taking pictures of native bees in Arkansas. The cool thing about these two different projects is that they pull the observations automatically, and experts can go through and identify them. So you can see the diversity of some of the native bees that we have here in Arkansas. Some are very small, some are a bit larger and slower and easier to take pictures of. But if you look in the top row, second from the left, you can see that I was taking a picture of this bumblebee and I ended up getting a bonus bee. It's very small, it's near the top of the plant. And I've come to find that taking pictures of native bees is one of my new favorite hobbies. So I encourage you to do the same. This collection represents, roughly 200 species that we have here in Arkansas. We likely have between 400 and 650 species of native bees in the state. 400 is a pretty conservative estimate, but most experts, estimate that we probably have closer to 600 species, but we really don't know. We've increased monitoring efforts across the state, but like I said, the easiest thing that you can do is just download iNaturalist and start taking those photos and uploading them so that maybe we can get a better idea of, some hot spots that we can sample in later. I'm going to skip the outreach and education part so that I can close with that. But my next two slides really just focus on the capacity, governance, and funding. The partnership, we finalized our steering committee charter in 2019. And this is a picture of the partners that signed our memorandum of cooperation in November of 2019. This section of the plan also includes some language about my position and how it was funded by NRCS, Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, and Quail Forever. And also it focuses on working with volunteers to accomplish these objectives and participate in citizen science or community science. Collaborations and partnerships is another small section in the plan, but the Arkansas Monarch Conservation Partnership is a proud partner of the Monarch joint venture. So, in a pre-COVID world, we were attending the MJV partner meetings and, updating the annual Monarch Conservation Implementation Plan. And we still have, we're still getting partners to join the Arkansas Monarch Conservation Partnership. But like I said, we're very proud to be involved with MJV. And if you haven't looked at their website, I highly encourage you to do so. They have a lot of great handouts and resources and webinars, and they're basically the national equivalent of our state partnership. So the Outreach and Education Subcommittee is by far the most diverse, subcommittee that we have, and they're working on a lot of different projects. Part of the goal in this section of the plan is to do 12 presentations and exhibits per year. The first year before I was hired, there were 6 presentations and 1 exhibit, but afterwards, 2019 was a great banner year. We did 62 presentations across the state and set up 30 exhibits, which are basically just tabling events. And in 2020, we did 40 presentations and 5 exhibits. Obviously, we're slowed a little bit down by COVID, but I think that the partners did a great job of pivoting to virtual platforms. So if you haven't already, please follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and we also have a YouTube channel. Right now, we're just under 1,400 followers on Facebook, and we just hit 422 followers on Instagram, and our handle is @Arkansas Monarchs if you'd like to follow us. Pollinator Week is the 3rd week in June, so keep an eye out for future events and workshops and hosts and everything. We try to do a really big push for outreach and education during Pollinator Week, so pay attention in June. This past year, we reached almost 9,500 people, and every year we have a governor's proclamation declaring the 3rd week in June, Pollinator Week in Arkansas. Our website also just underwent a big change, so I encourage you to go and look at it. We have a wonderful YouTube video that was, created in 2018, I believe, and it's called Wings of Hope. It's on our homepage, but we have a lot of great resources. It's still under construction, so if there's anything that you can think about, suggestions or otherwise to add to the website, please email me and let me know. We want to make sure it's kind of your one-stop shop for all Arkansas things. We also put together a native gardening for Arkansas pollinator resources. You can find it at the Arkansas Game and Fish website and also at the nature centers across the state. We also have a native plant care and maintenance guide that is available on our website and a recommended native plant list. I know that the Ozark chapter of Wild Ones has a lot of great resources on their website. So please check there first and then come and see if we can help supplement the information that they're putting out. And this is a living document. Most of the presentations that I give, I'm trying to convince people to plant native. So I'm assuming those that are on this webinar are already on board, but I just want to say if you have different experiences for caring for native plants in a more formal garden setting, please feel free to email me and we can collaborate and update the document. We also have some great coloring sheets that are available for free download on the website. And if you're not aware of it already, I always like to do a plug for the Grow Native website hosted by the Missouri Prairie Foundation. I think that this is actually a screenshot of their old website, but it still has the same great resources. They have landscape plans. I would say about 95% of the species that they use are also native to Arkansas, but please make sure that you verify that the plants are native to your part of Arkansas when you if you decide to use their landscape plans. I think that they're a great resource and a great starting point if you're looking to do, more of a formal planting using natives. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is that a lot of the landscape plans have really adorable names, like butterfly berm or hummingbird haven. But remember, because you're using those native plants, all of the plans will benefit pollinators, improve soil health, improve water infiltration and water quality. So just remember, using native plants will do all of those things. In the past, we've done a Schoolyard habitat grant. It was a one-time thing, so the program is no longer active, but we partnered with Pulaski Conservation District to get funds from Audubon, Arkansas and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and we purchased materials for greenhouse kits for schools to be produced, and we had 13 schools participate. Part of the outreach and education plan is to encourage people to certify their gardens. There's a lot of different options. Wild Ones has their native plant butterfly garden certification program. In the state, we also have the Bird Friendly Yard program by Arkansas Audubon. And then obviously Monarch watches Monarch Way Station, and then National Wildlife Federation certified wildlife habitat. So I am in the process of starting my own garden, so I can't wait to start my collection of signs and certifications. So how can you help? I really want to save time for questions, so I will go quickly. But the most important thing really that you can do is to create habitat for pollinators. And by doing so, you really just want to plant Arkansas natives. And really, this native habitat can take a variety of forms. You can do a prairie restoration. You can have kind of a wild looking pocket prairie garden. We can establish habitat in maybe unlikely places. And also you can maintain a more formal garden with natives that support a diversity of pollinators and insects and wildlife. So to do this native habitat creation, we want to reduce or eliminate pesticide use, specifically insecticides. We want to plant native milkweed species, and we want to include a variety of those native plants. And, we used to recommend a minimum of 3 species that bloom in, spring, summer, and fall. So that's 9 species total. But I'm kind of changing my tune, and I'm really just encouraging people now to just maximize bloom diversity and pay particular attention to those early and late blooming species to fuel the monarch migration. And also to be mindful when they're mowing and follow guidelines to minimize that impact on pollinators. This is a great graphic that Heather Holm created. She has a couple of great books for pollinators. I can send this out after, or you can Google it, but basically this graphic shows how to leave standing dead so that you can benefit stemness bees in your native gardens. But you start in the winter, you come back in the spring, they use those stems, and then the next spring, the new brood of native bees emerges. And remember, when we're planting these natives and we're establishing pollinator habitat or monarch habitat, we're really benefiting more than monarchs. We're benefiting songbirds, moths, bees. If you're doing larger habitat restorations, quail, turkey, deer, other wildlife. And like I said, I'm not used to presenting to a group that's already bought in on native plants, but if you aren't and you're curious, I highly recommend Dr. Doug Talmey's 2 books. His older one, Bringing Nature Home, is a great foundational read, but if you had to pick one, I highly recommend Nature's Best Hope, because it was published in February of last year, and it has a lot of his updated research numbers. So take home, what can you do to benefit monarchs in Arkansas? You can create habitat by planting a diversity of Arkansas native plants. You can join iNaturalist and upload your observations of native bees and monarchs and other wildlife and plants. And you can volunteer. Seed collection events happen across the state, but we also have a list of community science opportunities that are available on our website that I highly encourage you to check out. And if you're a landowner that's interested in learning more about those cost share programs that I mentioned, or receiving free technical assistance or free management plan, please contact your local Quail Forever biologist or Arkansas Game and Fish Private Lands biologist, or you can email me and I will connect you to those people. And I already showed this slide, but just to reiterate, they do provide free technical assistance. There are no strings attached, and there is no obligation to participate in cost share programs, or for some reason people think that if they do participate in cost share programs, they have to let people onto their land, like hunters or something like that, and you don't have to do that. So it's still private land. And I just want to take a moment to really thank our partners. We've done so much in the last 3 years, and I'm so excited to see what we do now in the future. Our plan is up in 2023, so we'll be looking to incorporate new goals, probably starting this next year. But we've done great things, and we're very proud to have the Ozark chapter of Wild Ones on board. Eric's a great partner. We love to work with him. And if you have any suggestions or ideas for, information or handouts or, anything that you'd like to see from us in the future, please shoot me an email and let me know. And with that, I would love to answer any questions. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you, Leslie. That was a great presentation. It's good to see that there's so many different people and groups that are working together on this issue. So that's very encouraging. We do have a few questions in the chat. Looks like Steve Allred asks, are all milkweed species of equal value or quality as monarch host plants?
So I don't have a very strict scientific answer for you. There was a publication that compared 4 different milkweed species, but only 2 of them were native to Arkansas. Basically, the take home from that paper, it's kind of funny. Monarchs would lay eggs on all the species, but the most robust caterpillars with the highest survivability rates were actually on the plants / species that they laid the fewest eggs on. So I watched a presentation from one of the researchers on that. So it's kind of funny. So the female monarchs seem to kind of lay their eggs on maybe those ice cream plants, and the vegetable ones, if you will, the ones that they choose the least, actually produce better caterpillars. So I have world milkweed, swamp milkweed, common milkweed, green antelope horn milkweed, tall green milkweed. I feel like there's another one in there. But I have a diversity of milkweed plants, and I have actually had eggs on all of them. So I would like to say that as long as you plant any milkweed that that's native to your ecoregion and you're comfortable planting in your garden and managing, you'll be benefiting monarchs. And I think that it really comes down to individual preference for those female monarchs, because I'll have people have, say, 2 species of milkweed, and in one part, they'll only lay it on this species, so they think that species is better for monarchs. But then in the next county over, they'll have the same 2 species, and it's the opposite situation. So again, I'm sorry I don't have a more scientific answer, but the main take home is planting native milkweed will support monarchs. Thanks.
Gotcha. All right, and thank you, Leslie. Debbie asks, do monarchs return to gardens along their flight path where their parent or grandparent butterflies were born?
That is a beautiful thought, and I really wish it were true. Sometimes, people like to think of them kind of like the sea turtles, or like migrating salmon, where they will return to those same beaches or the same streams that they were born or that their parents were at. I haven't seen any evidence that this is true, but I like to talk to my monarchs, and I like, no, the short answer is no. I'm sorry.
Janet asks, what is an example of a private right-of-way? You may have already answered that with the utility right-of-way, but are there any other examples
No, that's okay. So really, that's just a distinguishing fact. So sometimes landowners have rights of way that actually run across their property that's maintained by the power company. So it's still private land, but it's maintained by, whatever utility company, owns the pipeline or the power lines or anything that runs across it. Some of them are on on public land. So that's kind of the difference. I have a lot of, actually, there's a new RCPP funding program that covers parts of southern Arkansas and parts of northern Louisiana, and it's targeting those landowners specifically that have, rights of way running across their property to help fund voluntary conservation practices so that they can help create pollinator habitat on their property, which is really exciting.
All right. Looks like there's just a couple of comments. James says the Arkansas Monarch Mapping Project is a project group done by iNaturalist, and he also wanted to mention that Bella Vista, Arkansas is a Monarch City, USA. So.
Oh, yes, I know. There's so much that I wish I could have included, but we do have, Monarch City USA's. I think we have bee-friendly campuses. There are some cities that have signed the Mayor's Monarch Pledge from National Wildlife Federation. I have a lot of information about a lot of different opportunities for people and communities to plug in. So if you're ever curious, I'd love to talk to you about your goals, and I'll try and connect you with the appropriate resources and programs.
All right. Petra mentioned how it's difficult to find seeds for native plants, and as Steve had pointed out in the chat, the Ozark chapter of Wild Ones, ozarkwildones.org, does have a list of places you can get native seed, and I believe Quail Forever does too. Correct? I think you'd mentioned that earlier.
Yes, we have our biologists give out a native seed vendor list. Most of those vendors just sell bulk seed. I think the smallest quantity you can get of a mix is 1/2 acre.
Okay.
But I know that there are several nurseries in Missouri that sell native seed packets. But also the great thing about Wild Ones is, if you plug in and you talk with other people, I feel like native plant gardeners, if you will, are always happy to share and swap seeds. I know I am. So
that's very true. Yes. Hopefully, whenever we can start meeting in person again, I'd like to organize some native seed swaps or some, native plant cells, that sort of thing, to have different native plant greenhouses, a location to, be vendors, that sort of thing. So hopefully, maybe that can happen in 2022. We'll just see how the pandemic continues to play out. Petra had also asked for property that has not been maintained as a natural pollinator area or prescribed burns of benefit.
So the short answer is yes, but my official answer, I would like you to reach out to your local biologist so that they can assess what's currently growing there. If it was planted into non-native cool season grasses in the past, I really recommend that you get a biologist out there to figure out if incorporating fire will, get you to the point where you want to be. If there's a lot of remnant areas that can be restored with just fire, say our native glades, for example, or some of our overgrown woodlands. But some of the old pastures that may not have an intact seed bed that has those kind of high quality natives, it really might be better to just start with a clean slate and reseed the area. So the best thing is to reach out to that local biologist, get that free site visit, the free consultation, so that we can help you accomplish your management goals.
And Ryan Diener had given a talk on the quail habitat restoration efforts in Arkansas that Quail Forever are undertaking, and there's a section of that presentation where he talked about prescribed fire and the different times of year depending on what's there and what you want to promote. And that webinar, the recording, can be found on our YouTube channel as well. Also want to mention there are, prescribed fire or prescribed burn associations that would probably be able to provide more answers on that topic as well. But like you mentioned, Leslie, it really depends on what you have there and what you're trying to promote. And my understanding is that some invasives like Sericea lespedeza, trying to burn it will cause it to come back more vigorous. So it's you got to definitely know what you're doing and where you're trying to get to before you undertake a prescribed burn.
Exactly. And there's a lot of resources out there to get you there. If you have any trouble finding it, please shoot me an email. A lot of those prescribed burn associations, basically they're just neighbors helping neighbors. So you help your neighbor burn, they can help you burn. A lot of those are popping up across the state. And you're right, Sericea lespedeza loves fire and not in a good way. And once you have it, it takes years to get the habitat back where you want so it doesn't choke out those native species. So again, please reach out to your local biologist. You don't have to be the expert. They're the experts. Call them and they can help you.
Yep. That's and Ryan Diener might be a good person to reach out to as well with Quail Forever. So I'm sure he or Leslie could probably direct you to who you might be able to speak with in your area. Just some other great comments. A lot of people just really enjoyed your presentation. I found it very encouraging to see that there's so many groups and organizations working toward these goals. A lot of people here, a lot of good comments, found it very informative, and I really appreciate all your great conservation work. Leslie Hodge says that her yard in North Texas was a Monarch way station, and they look forward to earning a second designation in Northwest Arkansas. So we look forward to your second designation in Northwest Arkansas too, Leslie. All right. Well, again, we really appreciate you sharing everything that's going on here in the natural state with Monarch Conservation. And we really appreciate all the great work you're doing, Leslie. I want to thank everyone else for being here today. Again, the recording of this webinar is going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so please check that out. The link placed in the chat box there, but you can go to YouTube and just type in Wild Ones Ozark Chapter and find all of our past recordings. The next webinar is going to be on Tuesday, September 21st at 11 a.m. That's where Rosalind Emery at the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks is going to talk to us about putting your native plant garden to bed for winter and how to get it ready for the cold winter months. So again, go to our website, wildones.org/join if you would like to become a member. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ozark Wild Ones, or you can reach out to get on our email list to find out about upcoming webinars by emailing me at wildonesozarkchapter@gmail.com. Again, thank you everybody, and thank you, Leslie. We really appreciate you spending your time here educating us and encouraging us all on the future of monarchs here in the natural state.
Thanks, Eric.